The honourable member for Foothills.
Madam Speaker, it's an opportunity for myself to rise today and build on the questions that I was asking last week in regards to the illegal blockades and the ramifications they are having on Canada's economy, but certainly specific to Canadian agriculture. And I just want to reiterate in my intervention this evening that this is a critical situation, that the situation for Canadian agriculture is at a crisis where producers are not able to move their products. And in our industry, in agriculture, we are so trade reliant that their inability to move their products from farm to terminal to port has crippled their ability to do business. And just to reiterate the situation we are now, when I asked my question of the minister, I had said that there were about 50 ships off of the port of Vancouver and about 19 ships off the port of Prince Rupert. I want to apologize to the House as I was a little off on my numbers during my question. In fact, it's not 50 ships off the coast or the port of Vancouver. It's actually 85. So we have seen in just a couple of days how that number has exasperated to critical stage. And as a result of that, when you have 100 ships off of the BC coast waiting to be loaded, a majority of those ships waiting to be loaded with grain, that is having a profound impact on Canadian grain farmers. They are short about 400,000 tons of grain. We have a backlog of 20,000 grain cars, and this is costing the Canadian grain farmers more than $300 million. And I want to give you a quote from Mary Robinson, the president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. And this is her quote, Madam Speaker. "How many blows can we take? The rail blockades are already causing propane shortages used to heat livestock barns and delays in grain shipments, which are estimated to be costing the industry about $63 million a week. We are now more than or close to 3 weeks into this crisis, and still no resolution. We have seen on a good sign that the Prime Minister said on Friday that these blockades must come down. I find it ironic that he felt those comments disqualified the Leader of the Opposition from even participating in meetings to discuss this crisis, but 3 days later he comes out and almost verbatim takes the same position as the Leader of the Opposition. However, my concern is when the Prime Minister said the blockades must come down, which are illegal, stated by a court injunction, he never tabled a distinct plan to ensure that those blockades come down. We have heard that some blockades have been dismantled, but in the same time, other blockades have arisen in their place, maybe a few miles away on a different railroad or a different bridge or a different highway. We have to see very distinct, concrete plans from this government to ensure that these illegal blockades are removed. As I said, for Canadian agriculture, this is particularly damaging. I spoke with some of the Canadian Millers Association this week as well, and they mentioned it is days, not weeks, before they are out of wheat and oats. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, Canadian shoppers go to their grocery stores this week or next week, and there's no bread on the shelves? The other issue is there's no feed for animals. If the millers don't have the source wheat, they can't produce the feed for livestock. So this is going to be a more and more critical problem for Canadian agriculture, but especially the Canadian economy, which is on its knees. I would just like to hear a concrete plan from the Parliamentary Secretary on how these blockades are going to be removed.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Labour.
Transport. But thank you so much. I was looking over my shoulder for someone else. Please, Madam Speaker, thank you. I'm pleased to speak to this important issue. As you know, rail transportation has been deeply embedded in our nation's history. Rail has connected communities from coast to coast and allowed them to grow and prosper. The desire for greater connectivity was one of the drivers of Canadian Confederation, leaving an indelible mark on our shared history. Efficient, effective, and sustainable transportation is still the backbone of our economy today. It is the key to its strength by enabling trade, supporting business, serving as an employer, and facilitating Canadians to get to their jobs. It is a marvel of interconnected modes of transportation working together. The rail sector employs thousands of Canadians, with almost 37,000 employed by them and almost another 4,000 employed in support activities. But every Canadian purchases, produces, or eats something that travels by rail. Whether it's in the car they're driving, the grain our farmers work so hard to produce, or the chlorine that is used by municipalities to provide drinking water, products that are transported by rail are diverse as they are essential. Our manufacturers, farmers, and other exporters need an efficient, resilient, reliable rail network. That's why we have said from the beginning that we need a peaceful and quick resolution to the blockades. Some people across the aisle wanted a rash and brutal intervention by our armed forces, but this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. Acting in such a reckless way would have been creating a riskier environment for our railways, but also for rail workers, for businesses who depend on rail to get their products to market. Our government has been working tirelessly and diligently on two fronts. The first is to meaningfully engage with Indigenous communities and leaders in order to find a both short-term and long-term solution that First Nations face both on and off reserve. And the second is to mitigate the impact Canadian blockades both on our economy and on Canadians themselves. We've been working with the railways to ensure more goods reach communities, including essential commodities like propane and chlorine. We are also supportive of safe rail transportation network. As you know, Madam Speaker, rail safety is the Minister's top priority, and we have taken serious actions to reinforce the resiliency and safety of transportation over the past 4 years. But we have also warned that while the right to peaceful protest is fundamental in Canada, anyone who chooses to exercise this right must do so in accordance to law. We have seen examples of illegal and very dangerous behavior that could have dire consequences for the people carrying out these acts. Interfering with rail operations is both illegal and extremely dangerous. Madam Speaker, in my time today, I barely scratched the surface of how important Canada's rail system is to Canadians. The prosperity of our country depends on that rail network, and we'll never stop trying to improve it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Well, Madam Speaker, this just proves my point that this is not a top priority for the Liberal government. I was not asking for a history lesson of Canada's railway system. Let me put this in perspective. Every day these blockades are in place cost Canadian grain farmers $9 million a day. Let me put this into a different perspective. In a little less than 2 weeks, March 15th, Canadian grain farmers who took money out in the advance payment program through Farm Credit Canada must start paying those loans back at 19% if they miss that deadline. How are they going to start paying those things back and those loans back if they can't sell their grain because of these illegal blockades on railways across this country that this Liberal government is doing nothing to do? Where is the plan to ensure these illegal blockades are removed today and in the future, not a history lesson on using the train tracks from one part of the country to another?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I was disappointed on Friday when, during question period, I mentioned that the government was engaged in dialogue, and what we heard from the other side was laughter. And it's disappointing to create the misinformation that the Prime Minister or the Minister responsible can direct the RCMP. And that's unfortunate, that the rule of law is not being respected on the other side, that there's a belief that the police or army should rush in at the whim of the Minister or the Prime Minister. That's not what's allowed under the rule of law, under the laws of Canada. Madam Speaker, we're going to do what we can do, and that's continue to offer the hands of dialogue and let police do their job, because we on this side of the House trust them.